While everything seems normal, unnoticed details can radically change a person's life. This story is about the gradual revelation of truths that have accumulated over the years without being noticed. I was smart enough to know things were going to go wrong that morning. But sometimes intelligence can be your worst enemy. Everything in the house, the tone of the conversations, even the electrically charged silence in the air, was a warning sign, and I chose to ignore it. I was 17, in my junior year of high school, and I had big dreams for the future: college independence. Maybe I'd go to Columbia, maybe Boston. I had dreams. Lots of dreams. Sadly, I wasn't the girl who was going to live those dreams. My name is Madison Keegan. Because I had evening jobs and was busy with schoolwork, I didn't spend much time at home. Or rather, I didn't want to. Her mother, Sarah, had died of cancer 3 years ago. And it wasn't just a physical loss. It meant everything was over. My father, Edward, had essentially been living on it ever since. Just breathing. He was settled in his armchair, yellow woven, a drop of coffee on his left, nothing on his right, and his eyes were always empty. It was as if life had left him, leaving only a shell behind. My sister Natasha had a different story. She was 4 years older than me, and after our mother's death, she seemed to have become someone else. Controlling, authoritative, someone who twisted every word, every glance, every silent agreement, everything our father gave her to her own advantage. There was always worry on her face, but something else shone in her eyes, a light. Perhaps salvation, perhaps victory. The house changed after our mother died. Before that, it was a warm, lively place. Her mother would make pancakes on Sunday mornings and sing to us while she combed our hair. She had a wonderful voice like an angel, and my father would laugh beside her. A real laugh, the kind that creates lines on the face, wrinkles in the eyes. Then, one day, that voice was gone. In the hospital, the beeping of the machines, and then nothing. Nothing. My father was never the same after that day. The first few months were terrible. I heard him cry in the middle of the night, sitting in the kitchen and crying. Then, 5 months later, he came out of the donation program. He just sat there blankly. His eyes were open, but he saw nothing. His mouth was closed, but he said nothing. He would go to work, come home, sit on his couch. The television would be on, but he wouldn't hear anything. Even when Natasha and I talked, he just sat there. This gap was an opportunity for Natasha. She began to take my father's place. When she came home, she started checking our homework. She started cooking dinner. She started signing permission slips. And my father, avoiding situations where he felt unhappy, simply gave Natasha permission. He accepted her every word. He began to believe in every idea she had. Years passed like this. Natasha gradually became more controlling. From a giggling sister, she became nothing more than a housewife, an elderly consultant, the heart of my father. And I remained in the background. In the background, without a voice, without a cacophony. In my father's eyes, who was the building block of Natasha, I just started to become a problem. In the garden, at one point at the far end, there were many expensive flowers. Our mother loved them very much. Yellow roses, pink peonies, light blue delphiniums. My father even used to go out and look after them. But Natasha looked after them every week, watered them, and made sure she was there with them. Then, one day, a rose grew old. Natasha whispered something in our father's ear, and that voice began like a storm above our heads. Madison completely ignores the flowers, Natasha said, her face filled with worry and sadness. It's as if she's not interested in anything since her mother died. The house means nothing to her. That first lie seemed so small, so harmless. But the seeds of lies grow quickly. You can't stop them. Few can escape them. And once they start, they engulf everything. As time passed, Natasha's stories grew. The new lie, broader, more complicated, more dangerous. By saying absurd things about me, she played the role of an anxious sister in front of my father. She whispered that I, who didn't have a mother, needed therapy. She said I neglected my studies, whereas I was just as successful as her in school, maybe even more. While she claimed I wasn't interested in plant life, I was ahead in my classes. I was interested in human psychology. I planned to study social work. But who would know? Only me. Every lie seemed as delicate as a crown of roses. Every word was a hook. The more my father listened to those sweet words, the less he knew about me. When Natasha spoke, my father listened, nodded, and even wept. "My beautiful daughter," he said, "I don't know how to raise you. Try to help me." I was deleted by his sister, who served as a teacher's advisor. During preschool, when I started spending more hours at home, everything changed rapidly. Natasha had already mastered manipulating my father, and now she was making more overt moves. One afternoon when I came home, I asked her something. I just wanted her to help me with my physics homework. It was about an equation, nothing complicated. But the moment she saw my face, I looked like a monster in her eyes. "Why are you looking at me like that?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just got up, went to her room, and slammed the door shut. I sat downstairs, racking my brain about my math, doing my homework. Half an hour later, Natasha came downstairs, her eyes red, as if she'd been crying. My father asked me about it that afternoon with a sad expression. "Madison, why is your sister upset?" "I don't know," I said. What else could I have said? Did she ask me? Did she cry about an equation? She said he looked at her too harshly, my father said. She said she didn't mean to hurt her feelings. She was just trying to help. The light went out suddenly. The suspicion in my father's eyes was there, clear. I felt the distance in those eyes, as if I were the missing piece in the guilty puzzle. And he was trying to throw me away before his loss grew even bigger. The expression on his face changed. Just 2 seconds. But I saw it. I began. "That's enough," he said. "We'll talk later." But then he never came. Just an icy silence. Every evening at dinner. Every night. Every morning. My father didn't speak to me, but he would ask Natasha, "How are you today? Was I good at school? Do you need any help?" I was in the background. Even when a person feels alone, they are actually learning. Every silence creates a new awareness. This awareness is the foundation of progress. After that night, nothing in the house felt real, even when I wasn't there. Natasha was working extra hours to keep my father happy. She was trying to protect Madison from the outside world, she said. She was trying to help me. It consumed her completely, keeping my father occupied almost every hour. I became something tucked away in the corner of her eye. A smile, but unnoticed. There, but invisible. Then Natasha turned 18, and the time came. My mother had set up a fund for us for our old age. Maybe she knew. Maybe she sensed. Each of us would receive $50,000 when we turned 18, legally. It couldn't be questioned about anything. The money was entirely ours. Natasha took it right away, and I watched, because I could only watch. Within 3 months, Natasha's money had completely vanished. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, gold and silver necklaces, handbags and shoes from exclusive shoe brands. And Trevor, a boyfriend who, ostensibly, aimed to live in another world, had big dreams, but whose foundations were all in the air. Trevor was the investor son of millionaires, or so he said. Suits, expensive watches, cars. He'd even impressed our father. "He's going to make me rich," Natasha said. "We'll start businesses together. Big businesses. You'll be jealous, Madison." I wasn't jealous at all. I was scared and wary. Trevor was trash, but nobody saw it. Natasha didn't want to see it because her money was gone. 2 years later, as I was turning 17, Natasha was completely bankrupt. Most of the money had gone into Trevor's business plans, business starts, investment opportunities, guaranteed return schemes. It was all a lie. All of it. Trevor was a con artist, and he had been one from the start. But by the time Natasha realized it, it was too late. Panic erupted at home. Natasha became increasingly frantic, constantly asking my father for loans. My father, horribly, kept lending her money. He withdrew from bank accounts, loaded money onto credit cards, without asking. At this point, my father's life had already become a terrible mess. The house was filled with smells and tried and failed attempts at change. Natasha wasn't just trying to protect herself anymore. I was starting to be drawn into the trap too. The plot was quite insidious. One Wednesday night, Natasha called me, saying she was going to inspect my room. My father told me. I was in the library, doing homework, spending hours there. My father walked into my room, his eyes blazing with rage, his face red, his hands trembling. He said what he'd found, $3,000 hidden under our house. bottles of unknown drugs in a cupboard, and a phone containing correspondence with drug dealers. All the evidence, all the proof, was completely fake. But who would have known? None of them were mine. But who would believe that? My father was in the groin when I got home. His face flushed, a mixture of anger and disappointment. "What is this, Madison?" he asked, his voice heavy with force, as if he were tearing down a wall. "What are these doing here?" I don't know," I said. I tried to defend myself. I found my words and spoke. "Daddy, these aren't mine. This is not mine at all. Natasha gave these to me." Had Natasha been this worried about you all day? She shrieked, and I shrank. "If she's told so many people about you, then what do you expect her to think about how serious she is?" "Madness. What's your father like? What are you going to become?" Natasha stood behind me, her eyes, as if staged by a basic actor, not seething with worry and sadness, as if half her heart was broken and the other half filled with hope. She didn't make eye contact. I could have forced her to apologize or say something, but I was only 17, and my father's anger was pressing down on me like air pressure, suffocating me. I was speechless. Natasha said quietly, as if protecting me, as if it were part of the game, "I know saying that hurt me, Madison, but I want what's best for her." "No," I said, my voice trembling. "No, Natasha, I didn't think you put these here." But my father didn't want to hear. He didn't want to listen. The eye contact was broken. There was a jerk. Then he turned and said, "Go to your room. I don't want to talk to you. Please leave." That night wasn't long ago, but everything sped up. The next day, Natasha, quite frankly, went to visit my father's office. A social worker, a therapist, a counselor, I don't know which one, but she whispered in my father's ear that I needed therapy. She subtly instructed him to call Child Protective Services. The result was very quick and very bad. The children's services came for an assessment within a week. They checked my house. They spoke to me defenseful, frightened, resilient. Natasha looked anxious at every question, and tears streamed down her face as she spoke. "I just want Madison to get help," she said. "I know this is hard and it's not easy for me either, but I can't live like this. I need to protect my sister." My father still believed, or perhaps he wanted to believe. After our mother's death, he had become a powerless, out of control man. And this simple story gave him the illusion of power. He actually thought he was in control because that's what a father whose son is lost needs most. A bit of control, a bit of purpose. The findings were conclusive. There was evidence. There were drugs. There was a phone. CPS placed me in a care home. A temporary protection order was issued. My father was assigned a supervisor who could contact me to account for Natasha's assistance. Weekly hours were set. Where, when, and under what supervision. On my first night at the care home, I was put in a thick-walled room. I sat in a corner under a bed, as if I could protect myself from being a body. There were other children there, not all of them well enough, and I sat beside them, silent, wondering why my life had fallen apart like this. It was a place where there were no questions, no answers. But that night, she emerged from a corner of the earth. A peaceful face, a woman with silver hair, entered my room. Her name was Patricia. It was Winters, and she was the guidance counselor at this nursing home. She sat beside me, not promising, just resolute, saying nothing. She just sat there. "I want to hear your story," he said then. "The whole story. No one will blame you. No one will judge you." And I cried. The years without a mother, Natasha's the mockery, every broken word. It all flowed away. A flood from my eyes, a scream from my voice. Patricia just sat there, sat beside me, and listened. For the first time, someone really heard me. That night, Patricia said to me, "You're believed in, Madison. Maybe you can't see anymore, but one day you will. Maybe it will take years for you to see, but I believe in you." If the numbers match, I wanted to see it too. Over time, events demonstrate how a seemingly ordinary habit can have profound consequences. Trust has persisted unquestioned for many years, further strengthened by shared responsibilities within the marriage. However, certain truths, when revealed, give the past a completely different meaning. Looking back, one begins to recall signs they hadn't noticed before. This process of remembrance is not easy and often carries a heavy emotional burden. Initial shock gives way to questioning, which necessitates a reassessment of both the past and the present. At this point, one tries to understand not only the other person but also their own silence. The fragility of the long-standing order becomes apparent. Beyond material losses, the erosion of trust leaves far deeper scars. This process can lead to feelings of loneliness, but over time, loneliness gives way to awareness. Awareness becomes the first step in accepting what happened, and this step marks the beginning of a new beginning. Patricia Winters had worked in Child Protective Services for 28 years. This meant she had seen every type of abuse, every form of neglect, every variation of lies and manipulation. Her eyes were like a radar, able to discern what was right from what was wrong. After our first conversation that night, those eyes were locked on me. After I gave her the feeling that she believed me, she just kept looking at me. During the first week at the nursing home, Patricia immediately sprang into action. She reviewed my file, all the details, all the pages, all the contradictions. My father's report, Natasha's statements, the police notes, everything. And then, something struck her as odd. "Madison," he said one morning after breakfast, "I need to ask you a few questions. If you don't want to answer, that's fine. But I need you to tell me the truth." I sat down. Across from her desk, I felt very small. But Patricia didn't put any pressure on me. She asked questions slowly, clearly, without interruption. She talked about the school's attendance records. I was in chemistry class at 2:47 p.m. exactly at that time, in that exact place. There was no way I could have been anywhere else. The electronic records, the teacher's witness, the 30 people behind me. And what about that cash withdrawal? The image from the ATM shows a girl, with her hair in a ponytail, appearing in the window of a white sedan. It wasn't me. Even her eyes are different. My eyes are brown. Hers are light green. But Natasha's, I knew this. I said quietly. I knew. I continued. But no one questioned me. No one even asked whether it was me or him. Patricia nodded, a gesture that seemed to say she understood me. "Yes," she said, "and that's very important." The temporary protection order lasted 5 months. During those 5 months, Patricia and her colleagues at the CPS worked like a detective team. They examined bank records. They took pictures of ATMs. They checked pharmacy records. All the similarities, all the details. And then the story began to completely turn upside down. The withdrawal was made by Natasha. The bank confirmed it. The phone purchase at the pharmacy, the same person. The prepaid phone purchase at the supermarket, the same car, the same woman. All the evidence, all the leads pointed to Natasha. But Trevor was now sinking into a deeper hole. Federal police had arrested him for fraud across 3 states. Over $400,000 had been stolen from the savings of several companies. He faced criminal charges, perhaps 15 years in prison. Trevor's lawyer offered cooperation. He could bring it all in, everything about Natasha, her plan to trap me, the ridiculous shooting, everything. When federal prosecutors offered him a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation, he came out singing a 12-page written statement. Everything. The plan to trap me was Natasha's idea from the beginning. For about 2 years, she had been stealing money from our father and transferring it to Trevor for his investments. When she realized it was becoming increasingly difficult to conceal her theft, she decided to find a scapegoat. I was the scapegoat. I forgot Natasha's boyfriend's name. The one she took out to change. I checked the names. Yes, his name was Trevor, but there might be a typo. Her written statement confirmed everything. She had told herself that committing me to a mental hospital would solve 2 problems at once. She would have found someone to blame for the missing money, and she would have access to my inheritance fund as my guardian. $50,000 my future. The written statement even included their text messages, the planning, the timing, their silly things, everything. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a calculated, pre-planned, cold-blooded act. The last sentence of the statement stuck with me when Patricia read it to me. Trevor's words. Natasha said her sister was insignificant, someone who wouldn't reciprocate. They were wrong. Over many years of shared life, Burdens that had accumulated unnoticed eventually become apparent. Burdens that didn't belong to just one person. This realization creates a profound shock, not only financially but also emotionally. Looking back, one realizes how much meaning those small details actually held. And at this point, the story begins to tell not only of a loss, but also of the process of getting back on one's feet. March 2012. Family Court. I'll be living under supervision for 11 months. Until then, I'm living with his grandmother, Dorothy, an old school friend of my father's, but she offered to take me into her family. The house was simple but safe. Hot meals, clean laundry, no pressure. My heart raced as I entered the courtroom. Patricia was there in the back as an observer. Detective Maria Santos was there, the CPS officer, the one who gathers and organizes the insane. My father wasn't in the gallery with Natasha anymore. He was sitting alone, his face aged, drawn. Natasha was across the room with a public defender. She looked much smaller, paler, no confidence, perhaps fear. The prosecutor presented the evidence one by one. ATM footage, bank records, time frames, teacher statements, pharmacy documents, grocery store camera footage, Trevor's written statement. Every piece of evidence, every event. And Natasha wanted to answer, but couldn't. You made the withdrawal at 2:47 p.m. Miss Keegan, the prosecutor said, showing the video footage. Natasha swallowed. She saw her own face, her ponytail, her car. While you were trying to incriminate Madison, you were withdrawing money at that very moment, the prosecutor said. Your sister is at school, with 30 witnesses and an electronic attendance system. Are you the one who withdrew $800 for grocery shopping? Silence. Please answer. Yes, Natasha said quietly. But nothing, said the prosecutor. Where did you put this money? Trevor's. Yes, Trevor Bancroft, the guy who has a fraud case against the federal government in 3 states. Did they give it to him? Silence in the courtroom. All heads turned. My father had his eyes closed. Then, the pharmacy documents in the file. Trevor's name, prescription number, date. The theft report made on October 17th. Yet the medications were hidden on October 14th. 3 days late. Why? Because it wasn't immediately after Natasha's plan against me was completed. All the evidence, all the actions needed to be discussed. In the courtroom, my father nodded his head again and again, as if he understood, but I knew he didn't. Judge Patricia Morrison has been in office for 30 years. She'd seen ugly custody battles, painful divorces, lies, and families torn apart by money and pride. But this case was something deeper. It was a story of one girl plotting to ruin another, using the legal system, a story built on lies. Judge Morrison looked at my father. His words cut through the courtroom like a knife. Mr. Keegan, trust is no excuse for neglect. You abandoned a young child to dangerous weather conditions based on unverified accusations. You made no attempt to investigate. Without evidence, without reason, without basic parental judgment, you favored one daughter over another. This is not parenting. This is abandonment. My father sat there, his face as white as a sheet, while the judge continued. Your eldest daughter devised a calculated, premeditated scheme to ruin her sister's life. She stole from you, lied to you, and manipulated you into participating in her cruelty. And you allowed it because it was easier to believe. Silence. Just silence. My father had started to cry. You prioritized the daughter who made you feel good over parenting, the daughter who truly needed you. The judge concluded, this is a crime written in writing. Natasha's sentence is severe. Fraud, theft, making false statements to law enforcement, endangering a child, all charges. The public defender secured a plea deal to avoid a full trial. 2 years of suspended imprisonment, meaning she wouldn't go to jail unless she violated probation. 5 years of probation. 200 hours of community service. Return of all stolen money, including the $50,000 stolen from our father. And the court issued a permanent restraining order. Natasha was not allowed to contact me directly or indirectly for any reason. If she came within 150 meters of me, she would go straight to jail. But most importantly, a permanent criminal record with a conviction for serious crimes. No work in the finance sector. No positions involving money or security. No working with children or vulnerable adults. The golden child now had a scar, and that scar would never go away. My father permanently lost custody rights. He was ordered to pay for my therapy and education expenses until I turned 21. He was also ordered to create a university fund from the compensation money. Community found out everything. Small towns talk. Within weeks, everyone knew what Edward had done to his little girl. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors turned away. The church group suddenly had scheduling conflicts every time he tried to join. Jolene, my father's new wife, filed for divorce 6 weeks later. She was complicit in my suffering. She knew it, and she couldn't bear to be reminded of it every time she looked at her husband. The judge turned to me. "Miss Keegan," he said, "you have shown extraordinary resilience in the face of extraordinary cruelty." The court granted full and permanent custody to Dorothy. Our trust fund would continue to be protected until I turn 18, and I sincerely hope that you will have a better future than your past, the judge said. A few hours later, as we were leaving the courthouse, my father tried to approach me one last time. In a pained, trembling voice, he said, "Madison." Dorothy walked past me without stopping, only interrupting her conversation. "You can't call her that anymore. Did you lose that right when you threw her into the storm?" she said. We continued walking. I didn't look back. Dorothy's house wasn't a big house. 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen. But it was warm, safe. Nobody was plotting against me there. There were no lies, no games, just open breakfasts, open conversations, open affection. She enrolled me in a new school. The past is a place nobody knows. For the first time, I made real friends. People loved me for who I was, not because of the stories they'd told me about how I should be. Finally, I started going to a therapist to process the manipulation I'd been subjected to for years without even realizing it. Not every day, but weekly. Patricia had referred me to a therapist, Dr. James Carson, a former child psychology specialist. Those sessions were a lifesaver. For the first few months, just crying, just trying to understand what was happening to me. Why my father didn't believe me. Why Natasha did it. Dr. Carson never gave answers, he just asked questions. His questions guided me toward my own answers. "Madison," he said one day, "if these events were due to your mistakes, what could you have done differently?" "Nothing," I said. "Natasha plans everything. I just lived through it." "Yes," said Dr. Carson, "this says you are not to blame. It's easy to say, but hard to live." For months, I believed the responsibility was mine, that my father's choice was my fault. But it wasn't. It was his choice. But I could understand my father's nature. My mother had died. He couldn't face the loss. He chose the easy solution. Believing Natasha is easier than facing the truth. In my last year of high school, I was starting to act like a normal person. I got a girlfriend. I kissed my first boyfriend, a simple moment. Really scary. My classes were going well. I was thinking about college. Dorothy wasn't planning a wedding, she was just supporting life. She asked me about my goals. She told me about money, that my inheritance fund was safe, that I wouldn't be able to get it at 18, but at 25 if we had student loans. "This is for you, Madison," he said, "but I'll only hold the map." It had become a life. It had become a future. It had become a hope. When I started teaching at Boston University, that life I'm talking about began again. I'm studying social work. I'm thinking of becoming a psychologist, specializing in child protection. Patricia, to be like Winters means saving someone's life. After all those years, at the end of the 9th year, a letter arrived. As the truth emerged, the weight of what had happened became clearer. After all those years spent together, the questions that remained far outweighed the answers. Every document, every signature, brought back memories of small details previously overlooked. How trust had silently eroded was now much more evident. This process wasn't limited to material losses. It also tested one's self-belief. Looking back, it became clear that everything hadn't arrived at this point overnight. Behaviors that had been considered normal for years now carried a different meaning. This realization was heavy, but also inevitable. Having to bear the responsibility for what had happened created an unexpected feeling of loneliness. However, this loneliness gradually transformed into an inner source of strength. With each step, it became possible to think more clearly. Even amidst the losses, the need to re-establish balance emerged. This search for balance showed that what had happened was not just destruction. Amidst the difficulties, The will to persevere made itself felt, and the story continued to move forward with the silent but powerful effect of this will. October 2020. 9 years later, the letter arrived in a cheap white envelope, addressed to Dorothy. It was written in shaky handwriting. The sender's address was a nursing home signed by my father. Dear Madison, I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything. I know you have every reason to throw this letter away without reading it. But I'm asking anyway because I don't have much time left and I need to say this before I leave. Currently Maple, I'm in Grove. I had a stroke 3 years ago. My left side doesn't work as well as it used to. Jolene is long gone. She took half the property and moved to Florida with an accountant she met online. The house was sold. There's nothing left of the life I thought I used to have. Natasha came to visit me last week. I wouldn't let her into the room. I can't look at her. When I hear her voice, I can't help but remember what I did because of her lies. You're the only person I want to see, and you're the only person I need to apologize to. I was your father, and I disappointed you in the worst way a parent can disappoint their child. I believed lies, not the truth. I chose comfort over justice. I cast you aside as if you never existed. I know you owe me nothing, but if you can find a place in your heart, if you can come and apologize just once, I would like to apologize to you in person before it's too late. Your father, Edward. Dorothy gave it to me, with a cup of coffee on top. When I started reading it, my hand began to tremble. 9 years. 9 years of silence. 9 years of someone who wasn't my father. And now, the compassion of someone dying. But which compassion, for him, or to heal myself? Go, Dorothy said simply, or don't go. But you have to decide. Exactly as you'd expect. Fluorescent lights, industrial floors, the smell of disinfectant trying to mask the stench of decay. My father's room was small. A single bed, a single window, a wall-mounted television playing whatever no one else watched. He was 73 now, but looked 93. The stroke had taken something vital from him, his strength, his vitality, his very being. It had left him wrinkled, gray, and small in a way I'd never seen him before. She cried when I walked in. For the first few minutes she couldn't speak. She just sat there with tears streaming down her face. And I stood by the door wondering if I'd made a mistake. Finally, she found her voice, but it was terrible. More than half the speech was slurred. Madison, she said. Maddie. No one had called me Maddie in 9 years. My mother used to call me that. He apologized repeatedly, slurred his words, and repeated himself. The paralysis had taken away some of his ability to speak. Blind, he said. Stupid. I've become cruel. Yes, I said, and the word came out harsh, but honest. I was. He said losing me was the worst thing that ever happened to him in his life. He said he thinks about that night in October every day. He said every night, every time it rains, he lets her finish her work. I didn't interrupt him. I didn't console him either. I just listened, because I had finished speaking. Then I said what I wanted to say. I forgive you, I said, and those words shattered the walls I'd built over the years. But I want you to understand what that means. I pulled a chair up beside her bed and sat down. I made sure she was looking at me. Her eyes were blurry, but they were there. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, I said. It means I've chosen not to carry this anger inside me anymore. It's too heavy and has worn me down, and I won't let you occupy a place in my heart anymore. My father remained silent. You threw me into the storm because you believed a lie. You didn't believe it because the evidence was too strong. You believed it because it was easier, because Natasha made you feel good, and I reminded you of everything you lost after my mother's death. You chose the comfortable lie over your daughter. Madison, he began, but I stopped. Listen, I said, I built my whole life without you. I completed my university education on my own. I built my career. I'm marrying a man who will never abandon me in a light rain, let alone a hurricane. I'm happy, truly happy, but you have to live with the consequences of your actions. This is no longer a burden I have to carry. It's yours. Tears still streamed down her face as she nodded. I think he had nothing left to say. He said slowly, I know, I said. I know. I just wanted you to know I apologize. I needed to see you one last time. I stayed for another 20 minutes. We didn't talk much. What else could I say? I talked to her about my job, my apartment, my new boyfriend. Superficial things, Safe things. She listened as if it were the most important conversation of her life. As I was about to get up and leave, he reached out with his good hand. He didn't take me. He just reached out. For a moment I let him touch my fingers, then I left. A nurse stopped me in the hallway. "You're his daughter, aren't you?" she said. "Yes," I said. "Your sister came last week. She wanted to see him, but he wouldn't let her in. He told us to send her away." I stood completely still. "She didn't want to see him," the nurse continued. "She said he was hurting her. Her sister spoke to me. She said she was very upset, but she can't connect with him anymore, no matter how much she confirms. She said she can't stand not seeing what he's doing anymore when she looks at his face." My head was spinning. After years of being the rejected, cast aside, the girl who wasn't good enough, my father had finally rejected Natasha, the golden girl, the favorite, the one he believed in unquestioningly. It was too late. Nothing mattered anymore. It was too late to fix anything. But still, something changed in my chest. Not exactly forgiveness, he had already given it. It was more of a feeling of completion, like finally turning the last page of a very long book. I left that nursing home and stepped out into the October sun. Same month, different weather, different life. 9 years ago, October meant rain, betrayal, and hypothermia. Now it means falling leaves and everything smelling of pumpkin. Yes, I'm an ordinary person. I don't care. 9 years ago, on the anniversary of this day, was the day my real life began. Some storms don't destroy you. They change your course. 9 years ago, on that October night, I lost my house but found my home. I lost a father who didn't deserve me and found a grandmother who did. I lost a sister who never loved me and found myself. When I got back to Boston, Colin was waiting for me. Takeaway boxes on the counter. A terrible movie was lined up on the TV. That patient look he gave me when he knew I needed time. "How did it go?" he asked. I placed my keys on the table and leaned towards her. "I think I'm finally done with this," I said. "I think I can leave this behind now." He put his arms around me and didn't ask any more questions. That's Colin's specialty. He knows when to apply pressure and when to just be there. Next summer, we're having the wedding at my grandmother's house. A small ceremony, close friends, delicious food. Dorothy has already started planning the menu. Meatballs are definitely on the list. Somewhere, Natasha is working the night shift and wondering where her life went wrong. My father is living in a nursing home, grappling with his regrets. Jolene is in Florida, acting as if none of us ever existed. But I'm in Boston. I have a career I earned myself, a husband who loves me, and a grandmother who will probably outlive all of us, purely because of her stubbornness. And yes, I finally got that band poster framed. It's the one I bought 9 years ago with my allowance. I found it online now and overpaid for it. I hung it in my office so I can see it every day. Some things are worth waiting for. This story may end here, but what it tells is not limited to this narrative alone. Some experiences don't just end where they are. They silently weave into a person's thoughts, decisions, and outlook on life. Details that go unnoticed for a long time take on completely different meanings when viewed in retrospect. Often, people see the truth not while they are living, but when they stop and think. This narrative exists not merely to list what happened, but to understand what those events meant. Because some stories raise questions instead of providing answers. What would I have done? What am I overlooking? What silences in my life are trying to tell me something? Over time, one realizes that the biggest breakdowns aren't the loudest ones. Sometimes when everything seems fine, the greatest burdens accumulate silently. Habits provide security, routines offer comfort, and familiar arrangements delay questioning. But this delay is not without cost. The important thing here is not to blame or dwell on regrets, because it's impossible to change the past. However, it is possible to decide what we carry from the past. People can turn their experiences into burdens or lessons. It's entirely a matter of perspective. Life doesn't always come with clear warnings. Sometimes the signals are very subtle. Sometimes, even if people see them, they don't want to make sense of them, because accepting them means disrupting the order. And when the order is disrupted, uncertainty begins. And uncertainty is frightening for most people. However, time shows that uncertainty is not always a danger. Some uncertainties open the door to new awareness. People begin to look at themselves more closely. They reconsider the relationships, habits, and boundaries in their lives. This process of reflection is not easy, but it is necessary. What truly matters in this story isn't the magnitude of what happened, but the reaction to it. Because what defines a person isn't what happens to them, but how they get back on their feet afterward. Getting back on your feet doesn't always mean appearing strong. Sometimes it means asking for help. Sometimes it means stopping. Sometimes it means starting again. Everyone awakens at certain points in their lives, realizing something. This awakening comes early for some, late for others. But no awakening is meaningless. A person is not obligated to carry the burdens they have carried until that moment. It is a choice. At this point, the viewer's task is not to compare this story to their own life, but to look more carefully at their own life, to ask questions, to notice the details, to try to hear the things that are left unheard. Because some truths don't shout. They reveal themselves through small, recurring signs. When people take these signs seriously, life becomes clearer. When they are ignored, the confusion grows. This narrative isn't meant to tell anyone do this, but rather to say try to look. Looking, noticing, trying to understand. These are the first steps to change. It is possible to establish a new balance at every stage of life. This balance is achieved not by erasing the past, but by placing it in its proper context. A person can move forward without denying their experiences. This is not weakness. It is maturity. This story doesn't end in absolute victory, but there is genuine acceptance. And that acceptance is often the most solid starting point. Maybe everything won't get better. Maybe some scars will remain. But people learn to live with those scars. And that learning is life itself. If this narrative evokes a sense of reflection in the viewer, it has achieved its purpose. Because some stories are told not for applause, but for awareness. And awareness is silent but lasting. The most important thing to say at this point is, nobody can control everything, but everyone can learn to be mindful. Everyone can better define their own boundaries. Everyone can take the silences in their lives more seriously. While this story ends here, what remains is far more than a lesson or a warning. It is a reminder of the questions one must ask oneself. And perhaps that is the most valuable thing. Because some narratives leave behind silence when they end. But that silence is not empty. It is filled with thought, awareness, and a new perspective. And the journey continues right here.